Hi there, I'm Rebecca and a really warm welcome back to my channel, PumpkinBecki. In this week's video we're going to be looking at the very special tree behind me and hopefully doing an air layer on it. Let's get started. The tree you see behind me is Primrose. It is one of the few things I was able to dig up from my parents' garden before my father moved into his nursing home. I was born in the house that owned that garden 50 years ago and lived there all my life until I moved in with my then partner and now husband. There's a house. Sorry. It was very hard to say goodbye to the house, but we needed to for my dad's safety and sake, and he was happy and safe at his care home in Southampton, so for that I am incredibly grateful. The estate was built on a hill, and as the road curved around, our house was just there, and at the back of the garden, up several tiers, was a beautiful sweet chestnut woodland, and I have lots of happy memories of being up in that woodland playing. And after we had it coppiced a little bit, I had a tree preservation order on it, which was entertaining in the hurricane because my bedroom could quite easily have been squished by the trees. They were only on a sand bank, and yeah, it was close. I did not sleep in that room for long during the hurricane. I went into the front bedroom. Once we did get the permission to have the trees coppiced a little bit, other species started to grow. There was a beech hedge at the back dividing our strip of the woodland to a neighbour who was in a completely different road, but because of the way it worked they were sort of behind us. But then eventually, with more light coming into that little bit of woodland, we started to get little yew trees seeding themselves, and I'd sown some wildflowers, so we were getting lots of native butterflies and lots of bees coming to the garden. We were getting primroses in the spring, snowdrops. It was really starting to evolve once we were allowed to actually take some of the weight out of the canopy of the sweet chestnuts. We loved the sweet chestnuts. I mean, us, the squirrels, the wood pigeons, all loved the sweet chestnuts. But I always remember my mother being very excited when she saw one of the first yew tree saplings appearing in the woodland. And if you don't know, yew trees are actually used in the treatment of cancer. And my mother died of ovarian cancer. So many special things about this tree that I have called Primrose in honour of the road where I grew up. I dug her up about 6 years ago from the woodland, so that was literally just as my father was about to move into his home. And I put her into a washing up bowl. Not very salubrious, I know, and I've left her there for these last 6 years, just sort of re-establishing herself. I can't even remember how tall she was. Pretty tall, but she has put on lots of thickness and lots of height in that time. We will have a little look at the rest of her in a second. She's desperate for a repot, but I haven't got to that stage yet. Plus, I really wanted to do an air layer on her. She's got a nice thickening up trunk, which we again will come in and have a look at, and I thought it would be great to, find somewhere to do a nice air layer on her. She's very straight, very simple, but it would be nice to try and take an air layer from her and then build up the rest of the tree. She's put on lots of sprouts lower down, which gives me the option of coming right down here, making this trunk appear as thick as possible and give us the rest of the tree. So let's stand back and have a little look at her. can't actually remember what sort of soil she's in. I think it must be Akadama, pumice and lava, because she didn't come home with a huge amount of soil on her. Being very sandy soil, it pretty much all fell off. There might be a little bit left in there. Let's get these seedlings out. I was having trouble getting water into here, so I know it's absolutely solid with roots. So I have in places just gone in and made little holes to try and give us a little bit of space for water to come in and sink down. You might notice she's actually in 2 washing up bowls, and that's because the first one, over 6 years in the garden, has completely disintegrated. So I have just slipped her into a second one so that I could carry her from the garden into here to show you. It's a real shame I didn't take a photograph of her when I brought her home, but hey, hindsight's 20/20, isn't it? A sempervivum. I don't know how that got in there. You can also see I've got some BioGold feed here. I've got 4 locations of it around the pot. I'm using an old toothbrush to try and loosen off some of this moss growth that has happened. I'm not going to go crazy, I'm not going to try and use vinegar to get rid of it. This degree of moss growth isn't enough to cause me any worries at all for the health of the tree. You might notice there are some yellowing needles happening. These are the old ones. They're happening right back at the bottom of each branch and are slowly starting to fall off. As you can see, and when I run my fingers through, you can see the odd one falling down. We also have some goldenish coloured growth at the tips. That's completely normal as well. The new growth often is this kind of bronzed colour. So as we look at Primrose, she has potentially a one-sided root growth, although I don't know what's happening on this side at all. All I can see in terms of surface roots are on this side of the tree. And it looks here like we've got some stacked roots that have slightly fused together. When we come to do a repot, we might be able to resolve that a little bit. We've got some old broken roots way off here which we can look to resolve again when we come to repot. There are actively growing roots, so that's lovely. Got a funny knuckle happening there, don't know what that is. Just presume it's part of this tree. But who knows, it might be something else that got itself seeded in there. And we've got a lovely little knot of roots happening there, bright red ones. We've also got some really nice craggly bits of bark happening, that's fun. And since I dug her up, I have had these lovely new shoots coming from here. When I dug her up, really the growth was starting at this sort of level, so it's about 8 inches off soil level before we start getting anything. The trunk is quite thick and straight, and it is doing a very slow natural taper, which is super. Absolutely wonderful. But I mean, I really want to make something that has a little bit of impact. I'm not massively into growing big trees, just simply for the fact that there's really only me to move them around. So smaller trees are easier to handle. Smaller pots are cheaper to buy. And yeah, I am 50 now, so I haven't got forever to develop this tree. I've got a decent chunk of time, hopefully. But I really want this to be something in my lifetime that I can look back on and say, yeah, I did that. So we have got lots of sprouts and branching happening. So I am almost considering taking the air layer here, trying to maintain that bud, and then we will see what happens with the rest of the tree. She's popping buds absolutely everywhere. It will take you up the tree in a second. Even on this branch, these are all buds popping. Incredible. So she's happy, she just needs a new pot, some new soil, and she would continue growing quite happily. I think that's my plan. I don't think there's much point in coming up much higher with the air layer, simply because the taper is so slow and gentle. I think we would lose the impact of taking the air layer if I made it too tall. We would just basically get a walking stick. So yeah, I think that would be the highest point. And we've got root flare, really great thickness there, and it is tapering, but then we can start to develop more taper with these young, finer pieces of growth. So, first things first, mark the bark. I'm just running my knife around horizontally. Feeling it go into the bark, and then you're meant to take a piece that is at least the diameter of the trunk, if not a little bit thicker. So I want to come to sort of just under this branch. I mean, this branch is going to come off. Why don't we do that now? So because we know we're not going to need this branch, I'm going to just take it off. And I will also remove this one. Then we can start to peel the bark off between the two cut points. Nice and gently. Not trying to dig in too deep. Literally just peeling back the bark. We need to remove the cambial layer, which contains the xylem and the phloem. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. We are down to the central core here, ready. That's what we want to achieve the whole way around, this sort of ochre yellow colour. That will mean we have removed all the xylem and phloem, all the cambial layer from the trunk, and it will no longer be able to push nutrients up and down the tree. Take it gently though, you're not trying to achieve that all in one cut. There's no advantage to that. wonderful that it's such a clear demarcation between the layers that you can really see what we're trying to get down to. Gosh, that's so wet. That is what is fueling the whole system. All the energy, the water, the hormones, everything is going up and down through this layer that we're peeling off. This is exactly what we're trying to achieve. We want a really good break in resource between the bottom of the tree and the top of the tree. This is what's going to force the tree to push roots from this point, not from here, not from here, but from this cut point of the bark. It just wants to peel off. It's fabulous. Just to make sure we have actually got rid of all of that cambial layer, we can just scratch the surface of this hardwood and just make sure there's no strands left, because any bridging of that gap could prevent the tree from creating new roots and just make it heal and form new bark. We don't want that. We don't want to put the tree through all this stress and then for it just to heal what it's done. And you can even leave this to sit for a few minutes just to make sure you have completely got all the fleshy growth off the trunk. It will also naturally dry out in the sun. The next step is to use a rooting hormone of your choice. This is Clonex, not sponsored. It's a gel. And I am just going to apply it to that bottom cut edge to promote rooting from that cut point at the top there. Going right round. As I said, we are not expecting roots from here or here, so we only need to focus that rooting gel at this point. I'm going to take some of these low sprouts off because they're just going to get swamped by the wrapping that we're about to do. So they're of no use to the tree. I've been soaking some sphagnum moss. So that's going to create a really nice environment for roots to grow in here. I've got some black plastic which has come off an old compost bag. I'm going to try and preserve this little sprout at the top here, if I can. Getting the bag tied on is always the biggest fiddle of the whole process. I'm going to apply the sphagnum moss right the way round. Lift the bag up around it. Find that little branch. There you are. And then I'm just going to carry on wrapping the wire around the top. The top doesn't have to be too tight. You still want to be able to add water I'll keep you up to date with progress, and when it comes to unwrapping that later in the year, then I'll take you along for the ride, just see what's happening with her. I'm not going to do anything else to her right now, I'm just going to let her carry on growing, and hopefully by the end of the year we'll actually have 2 primroses. Right, well that's it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, share and subscribe to me here on YouTube, and until next time, bye.